Hey everyone, my name is Brad Kossman. I lead data science and analytics at Softcrylic. Our team handles mostly marketing and science requests, and this tool that we're going to demo today is really born out of a service offering that we've had for many years. I'll get into more history there in just a second. Morgan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm a consulting manager here at Softcrylic. Work a lot with audience and customer science data, and we're really excited to show you where the product's at today. It's come a long way.
Cool. Thank you, Morgan. So Audience Match is a Gen AI solution that helps our clients with audience segmentation and activation. The idea here is basically that we will take customer data and we leverage traditional machine learning techniques to identify specific, distinct behavioral segments that we can then attach personas to. And then those personas are useful for activating against, as each one of them has specific traits that makes them more amenable to certain types of products or messaging, what have you. It's a very strategic approach to audience segmentation. It's not just for marketing, it can also be leveraged across other business units. And one of the primary application of Gen AI, or where this tool started, was when we run our machine learning, we just get out a bunch of statistics, and it's actually very difficult to interpret those statistics. Well, LLMs are very, very good at interpreting such things. So we decided to build a tool to see how an LLM could help us analyze audience segments as well as strategize against them, and then can we build some pipes out to marketing activation platforms to actually activate on them? Can we put all this at one person's fingertips with very, very little technical training needed so that they can go from a raw customer data set all the way to activated audiences in a matter of minutes? I think the answer is yes, but let's see how it works. Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's take a look. I'll share my screen here.
So while Morgan has been pulling this up, we've been running the traditional form of this. We call it audience modeling for about 7 or 8 years now, and we've seen a lot of success across B2B, B2C, travel and hospitality, entertainment, health information systems, all different industries. We've been able to identify select audiences that map very nicely onto business initiatives and help our clients activate against those rich audiences out of their own platforms.
Yeah, it's been a really, really big success for our clients, and it's added a lot of value, and this product really streamlines it. So let's take a look. If you were with us for our first webinar or our presentations at Data Science Connect, you'll notice that the UI looks quite a bit different. So the UI is quite a bit more streamlined, and we've added more functionalities that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So previously, we saw a lot about the audience assistant and the live chat function. But we're going to talk a little bit about data workbench, the functionality that we've added, as well as some operations, which is more marketing operations, engineering. It provides the ability to activate on those audiences across other digital, within your digital ecosystem. So Audience Assistant here is our kind of live chat. This is where we can talk to AudienceMatchAI, strategize, brainstorm with it, ask it about our cluster data. And we can kind of look at some of the data as well. So in Customer 360, you have a granular look at your customer data. Okay. In Customer Personas here, you have that aggregated view, each of your clusters, and what does their data look like, right? 45% of this cluster is female, 46% of this cluster is female. And then we have our segment breakdown. This is where that summary is. So let's just take a look. We have our digital power users, our sweepstake enthusiasts, social media converts, loyal driver devotees, and casual multi-channel fans. If you click into these, you can get some information about those clusters. And I can also just ask AudienceMatchAI about those clusters.
So just to recap, what you saw going from Customer 360, customer personas, and segment breakdown was basically going from that row level, customer level data that can be stitched across digital marketing touch points, transactional data, basically anything that you can stitch to a unique identifier. This tool can leverage to help create those distinct groups. And that is really the flow on the back end. We start off with that raw data set, you move into just the raw statistical segment cluster outputs, and then you have the breakdowns and the explanations for who's actually in your audience.
So I've asked Audience Match, what are the core metrics that differentiate our audiences from one another? So I just want to try and get a feel for those audiences and what is really creating that separation between them. So it looks like digital identity adoption is a very big factor here. The power users and loyal driver devotees have a 100% adoption rate, where someone like the casual multi-channel fans has a 64% adoption rate. Sweepstakes participation, mobile app engagement looks like is a big one. And let's try and verify this data, right? We've done a lot in Audience Match to try and limit hallucinations. We've added a lot of guardrails and ran a lot of testing around that, as it's hallucinations are big limitations of LLMs, as we all know. So it's telling me the digital power users have extremely high mobile app usage at 14.66 average visits. Let me take a look at my customer personas, digital power users, mobile app visits. Let's find that one. 14.66 there. Okay, so I validated what that's telling me is true. I could also take a look at it here on my chart, mobile app visits. Let's take a look what it shows us by cluster. Cluster 0, that's our first one there, digital power users, 14.66. Cool. So that's great. I'll ask another question.
So while Morgan's working on that, I want to put a little finer point on the hallucination security thing. That is a really good point. Effectively, what we're doing here is leveraging that traditional machine learning to aggregate the data. Hallucinations pop up for a couple of different reasons. If you expose a massive table like your customer level data to the LLM, you're going to have a much higher probability of getting weird results. So that's why we leverage the traditional machine learning to roll that up into a manageable number of segments. One byproduct of that is that you have fewer numbers that you have to spot check when it's kind of going through its strategizing. You can always just go look at that customer segment table and verify that what you're seeing on the output is reasonable and realistic. And we'll see some similar kind of functionalities when we get into data workbench as well, as far as security and keeping a human in the loop.
Cool. So I've just asked Audience Match to give me a concise executive summary of our audiences that I could send to my executive leadership team. I've asked it to keep it just to one bullet point each, something really well distilled. And it's done that for us, right? It's telling us how many fans we have in there and giving me like a quick, high level, quick hitting heuristic about each audience. So that's great. Let's do one more question here. This is where we've had a lot of fun just strategizing and brainstorming with AudienceMatchAI. So say
So another thing to note here is the GenAI system that we've constructed, it is exposed to this segment level data, those statistics. That is true. We've also built a contextual system on the back end with a few different components that allows you to upload things like brand studies. In this case, this is a sports team that we work with. They had a large brand study done a couple of years ago with things like psychographic personas and demographic analyses, team history, things like that, that all filter into these responses and make the responses kind of more tailored towards the specific brand. The second piece is you can now upload data sets like augmented data sets to help you with analysis and strategy in the front end of the tool as well.
So I've told Audience Match that I want to build a campaign around travel to a race in Hungary next month, and what would be the most effective cluster to target and why. So Audience Match is able to work with me to try and sort through that information. So it's saying the primary target should be our digital power users. And it can give me some information as to why we might target them, right? They have a global presence, they have an established tenure, 17.3 months. And they have a complete digital identity adoption. So it's a really fun tool to work with like that. And we can just keep the banter going with AMAI and refine our campaign, see if there are other clusters for opportunity for those types of campaigns, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what you've seen Morgan just do here is go from, again, raw customer data set to like strategy and the ability to actually activate these audiences. Keep in mind, each of these segments is an addressable audience because it's stitched to customer IDs, things like hashed emails. And the way that this works is the Gen AI system gets to act as sort of a super analyst. Morgan is also a super analyst, but Morgan, I think it would be difficult for you to keep all of those numbers and a 200-slide brand study in your mind and look at all of those every single time you answer a question.
Yeah.
So this is kind of augments our abilities as humans in a very creative and flexible way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool. So let's move on to some of the new functionalities that we've added. Data Workbench. This is a cool one, and it's going to allow us to write and run queries against our data. So it's loaded up here. On the right, we'd have an ER diagram, right? You might have your cluster data and maybe campaign performance data alongside those clusters, customer metadata table, product metadata table, things like that you could allow AudienceMatchAI to access. So let's start building some queries here. Let's just ask it to show me the first 10 rows of data.
Couple of things here. One is that this tool was originally just envisioned to help augment what the audience assistant has access to. So you can push in like campaign performance, say at the segment level, and then have the audience assistant help strategize based on previous performance for various different groups against various different types of messaging, kind of augment that strategy session. Another thing is it's also just purely useful for analytics. I think this is actually the #1 requested feature of the tool. A lot of marketing analysts spend 20 plus hours a week just pulling numbers ad hoc or putting together reports. This thing basically takes your hands off keyboard to create that SQL.
So we have our output from the SQL. We can actually see the SQL that was generated, right? Select all from this table, limit 10. And Audience Match will also kind of do a little bit of analysis on it, right? It's told me it's retrieved it. Here are some unique identifiers. Here are the user engagement flags, geographic diversity, things like that. So let's build some more complex queries. We won't go too complex yet, but
Want to talk about the query for a second here. So I mentioned during the Audience Assistant overview that we are effectively aggregating data in that module and by taking millions of customer records and boiling them down to like 5 different segments. So the LLM has access to a smaller amount of data, less likely to hallucinate, easier to spot check. Same philosophy here with the query. What we're doing is we're not exposing the Gen AI directly to a huge data set. We're not exposing that data set to the Gen AI. What we're doing is we're letting the Gen AI write a query to roll up that data and then interpret it. And the query is shown here as basically a way for the analyst to spot check and make sure that the logic is indeed what they would have written. As Morgan writes more and more complicated queries, that becomes more and more valuable. Yeah, you can see here, this would have taken a few minutes for a human being to write. And you can imagine even more complicated queries, just saving more and more time, being able to iterate more quickly with your data. Yeah, back to you.
okay, let's continue. We'll ask Audience Match to write a query on engagement by age group.
So one way that we at Softcrylic view AI is as a new type of user interface. So it's kind of this evolution from punch cards to keyboard and mouse with a terminal to like Windows type operating systems. And all of those are just different ways for you to get access to what's behind your computer screen. So just your data and applications and so forth. Gen AI is just another way to do that. You're seeing a couple of examples of how Gen AI can do that today. So instead of a SQL editor, we're just using human natural English language to interact with our data.
Yeah. So it's done that for us. It's given us a little analysis and a quick summary, and it's pretty nice, right? It's actually grouped. It's decided to group the customers by age, right? And here's our query for it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's quite a big query. And it's gone ahead and grouped the customers by age. And it's pulled some insights out of it, right? The 25 to 34 are the largest user group. There's smaller representation in those older user groups. If we took a look, right, you actually see 65 plus, maybe they have much more average reward use, right? Where those younger customers have less of that, and they actually have quite a few more visits on average. This is interesting. They have like this older group has quite a few more visits on average, but that younger group has a higher digital identity completion rate. So pretty interesting.
You accidentally said BigQuery a minute ago,
Oh,
and there's got to be a few jokes in there somewhere, but I'm not gonna do
that's a
them for
big
you.
query.
Google, don't come after us, please.
Okay. Okay, one thing that's pretty cool is, you've seen me asking these questions in plain language, but I could also kind of ask it to more explicitly write me a query. So, what did we do before?
In a moment, we're going to show you the pipes for how to do this, but once you have selected a data set in Data Workbench, kind of let it run its magic, there is an option to push this data set into the contextual system that we built behind the scenes. So then you can go back into the audience assistant, and now it has access to yet another data set. You can put a different lens on your performance data or your customer data to help drive that strategy forward. It's almost a way of refreshing your segments with data that you already have.
So now instead of saying something like break down my customers by country, I've actually told it explicitly, hey, count the customers and group them by country, right? Right. And so it's giving me the SQL query for that, and it's giving me the output. So you can kind of ask it a natural language question, or you can kind of build a query through language like that.
Very cool.
Cool. Let's move on to operations.
Yeah. Operations is probably the least sexy tab of this, but it actually does a lot. And this is, I've mentioned that the vision here was to go from a raw data set to an activated audience. You have to have some plumbing to be able to do that, and we're trying to do that in as user-friendly a way as possible.
Yeah, so we can do quite a few things here. If, say, we wanted to import some different data, let's just let this load here. We can do that. I'll go ahead and import this, head back to my audience assistant, right? And now instead of those 5 clusters with the digital power users, I think we had up top, right? And social media converts, right? We have different audiences here, right? I just imported some other cluster data. So that can be really helpful. We can export. We won't show this all the way through today, right? But we could export to AWS S3 in a CSV file. We could export it directly to an AEP landing zone so that you could activate on your audiences there. That's very powerful. Or send AWS to join with other data that you have in your databases.
Just to piggyback off a couple of things that you said there, the import's super useful because this tool allows you to create different segments. So if you want like a digitally oriented set of customer segments, you can just feed it digital data. If you want more of like a transactional set, like a traditional RFM analysis, you can just show it transactional data. And so you have multiple copies of segment sets for different use cases, and you can bring those up one by one in here and play with them. As Morgan mentioned, we also integrated this with Adobe Experience Platform before Adobe Summit this year, so we could show this off a little bit. We're always building, I've got some more notes on platform and things in just a moment, but we're always building connectors into and out of the tool into whatever our clients ask us to do. So pretty excited to have some of that on the roadmap as well.
Yeah, it's really adds a lot of value to the product.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to talk about the knowledge base sync, Brad?
Yeah, so I've alluded to this a few times. Basically, when you have a data set, you can sync it to the contextual system behind the scenes here. So Morgan just created all of these data sets that you see here in the left panel with the data workbench. Every time you run a query in data workbench, it'll basically create a table for that and then just kind of park it in CSV. You have the option to move those data sets into and out of the contextual system so that when you go to Audience Assistant to interact with your data, it will have access to it. It will be able to see different types of data set. Useful for a few different reasons. Let's say I want Morgan made a query a minute ago of like a country view by customer, and then maybe we could have a campaign performance view. Both of those at the same time have synergistic effects, and you can run new interesting strategies. Cool. Morgan, did you have any other functionality that you wanted to walk through?
I think that's most of it today.
Cool. So just a few concluding notes. First of all, this is, you saw AWS in export a minute ago. We developed this on AWS first, but we are currently building a Databricks version of it as well, where we plan to roll it out against all the hyperscalers, as well as Databricks Snowflake, and we're happy to customize it for any platform that you might work on. Near-term roadmap, we've got a couple of really cool things coming out where we have a couple of agents that are very close to release. one of which will build customer segments based on, I was mentioning a minute ago, you might choose digital data or transactional data. The agent will take a human input like, hey, I just want a transactional customer segment set, and it will go find the data set for you, stitch it all together, run all the ML in an iterative manner, and then come back to you with that customized set of segments. Other roadmap items, again, pipes in and out. We want to connect this to as many marketing activation platforms as possible. You can imagine using this as your core segmentation and strategy tool, and then just use your CDP, whatever one you're on, for orchestration and doing what it's good at. Just to recap here, we used to do these kinds of projects the hard way, the manual way, pre-Gen AI. They would take months. A data scientist, marketing analyst, strategist, creative folks, the whole 9 yards. I think this would take 6 or so months usually to go from a raw data set all the way to campaign activation. What you saw today, you can do this in 5 minutes. Just start with a raw data set and go all the way to activated audience segments, addressable audiences. That's really exciting stuff. It's driven a lot of value for a lot of our customers. And please reach out if you have any questions or you want to learn more or get a custom demo.